Are we ready to roll?
You are.
Okay, welcome to the Essex Junction Trustees meeting. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. And tonight we have, besides our regular trustee meeting, we have a joint meeting with the Essex Town Select Board, and they'll be joining us at 7 o'clock in about a half an hour. So, first and foremost, Pat, do we
Yes,
have
sir.
any agenda additions and changes?
We do. We have one. It's a memo from you to the trustees, and the select board should be an addition for the, I think, the joint meeting.
Right?
So it should be introduced at this meeting, so that's it.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
I move we accept the agenda as amended.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And I should mention that I think trustee Elaine Sopchak is at Channel 17, at their studio in Burlington, and she should be joining us shortly. And trustee Lori Houghton, I believe, may not be joining us tonight. But we'll hold down the fort. Okay, so on to the next piece, which is audience to be heard, guests. Anyone in the audience have a question or comment besides, yes? No? Are we good?
No, I'm good.
Okay, good, okay. So first order of business then is on to old business, which is to adopt the FY19 proposed budgets and capital program. Pat, Lauren, do you want to join us really quick, or are we good? Do we just want to move quickly and do that, or?
I think you can just move.
There has been no
quickly.
change since the last.
We made the changes that were agreed to last time, and
Okay.
those are the new numbers that you have there before you.
Okay. I'd like to read just a quick, I'm going to try to find a quick summary so I can read that just for the water fund.
You just want to do the discussion portion of it, read that off, the numbers and.
Yeah, well, what, do you want to,
Go ahead. I mean, the discussion on, the memorandum is basically a few changes to the budget were discussed and approved at the trustees meeting on
Right,
January 23rd, 2018. Those changes were a reduction to the shared employee expense
yeah,
line item in the administration budget, and reductions to salaries, social security, and workers' compensation line items in the fire department budget. The reduction of the administration budget had the effect of reducing the water, wastewater treatment, and sanitation budgets, also because those budgets pay a portion of the administration budget. The approved changes are incorporated into the proposed FYE 2019 village operating budgets amounts listed below. The amounts of proposed FYE 19 village operating budgets are as follows. General fund, $4,954,687. Water fund, $3,866,360. Wastewater treatment fund, $1,949,836. Sanitation fund, $489,925. Recreation programs, $1,711,748. The amounts of the proposed FYE 19 capital funds budgets are as follows. General fund capital reserve is $2,001,931. Rolling stock fund, $265,677. And the water capital reserve of $187,663. Wastewater treatment facility capital reserve is $7,957. Sanitation fund capital reserve is $351,522. Recreation capital reserve is $110,700. The cost of the tax rate to support the general fund budget is 0.3106 cents. This is an increase of 3.67% from the FY18 rate. The utility rates to support the enterprise funds budgets are estimated to increase by 7%. And I recommend that the trustees adopt the various FYE 19 budgets in the amounts listed above that I just read.
Okay, so I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that the trustees adopt the various FYE 19 budgets in the amount listed above.
I'll second it. Before we vote,
Yep,
understanding that we just had a fairly significant water main break,
yep.
do we want to look at adding a little extra money into the capital budget to help with what will likely be some significant costs?
So we are increasing the water fund capital reserve quite a lot this year. I don't know if you wanna
I know that there's a
look
fair
it up.
amount
I
that's,
think it's by 50,000 each year for the next few years, so.
and is that gonna be enough to cover that and the planned capital expenses already?
The water break itself is, let's see, it's gonna be about 36,000, I think, which will come right out of the water fund operating budget.
But then we need to rebuild the road, right?
That amount is 28,000, and it will be charged to the water fund, because
Okay.
it's a water break.
Okay. And so then there's no concerns about it tapping into the existing amounts and leaving us short later on down the road? Okay.
I hear you. That's very good. You're making a very good point, Andrew, and I think it's something, it's a very good point. I had, just to elaborate a little bit more, I was kind of thinking, you know, I think Densmore has some issues. The full length of Densmore has some issues. And I was kind of thinking maybe it's time to look at a total rebuild, but then you're really talking about moving a significant project. So
Yep.
I remember when I had a brief discussion with Rick about it, and he said he thought it was in the vicinity of 20 grand to fix the road, that upper ends, and put it back in really good shape for. So,
Yeah, and the Densmore culverts, they are already within the capital projects, within the list. I don't remember exactly where that lands, but the entire road itself, which driving on a fairly regular basis is not
Yeah.
that great.
no,
I'm definitely in need of some work.
yes.
But needless to say, I think that if staff are saying there's more than enough to cover the break and to
This
repair the
break.
break, then
This particular break.
Yep.
We have a bunch more, it's not gonna be good, but, like I said, we're increasing the capital reserve contribution by 50,000, and planning to do that pretty regularly after this in order to pump up the capital reserve for water.
great.
Yeah. Well, do you want to do that, Pat? Yeah. Go ahead. Thanks, Pat.
Yep.
Thanks, Andrew. So Pat was going to mention, just for the sake, for the camera, for Channel 17, and we'll probably do this a few more times, the totals on the budget. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, in adding up the general fund, water fund, wastewater treatment fund, sanitation fund, and rec programs, which are basically our operating budgets for the next year, it's $12,972,556. In looking at the capital funds and the budgets breakdown within the capital funds, that would be $2,825,450. So that's what we'll be looking to spend next year, and hopefully we will finish in the black as we do most years.
Yep. Okay. So any further discussion? Dan, you good? Andrew? We'll talk some more about the water break in a little while. So, and I think one of the other things we said is we would try to put a summary of this on Front Porch Forum and get it, try to distribute it around as well. So we have a motion on the table to approve all this, to go forward with this FY19 budget. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Good. So it's unanimous. Thank you. So we are on to new business, and item number 1 is a bike repair station in the village right away. Raj, from the Bike Walk Committee, come on up and talk to us about this. Sounds good.
You should all have a picture of this, I hope, in the agenda. I thought I brought one with me, but I didn't, and it's perfectly aligned. The wrong aspect ratio, but you get the idea. So this, oh, look at that.
There we go.
Some experts here. So this is the, it's showing Main Street in front of Nest Coffee Shop. So this is, what we're proposing is a self-service bike repair station. The owner of Nest is a bike enthusiast, pretty passionate about it. He also owns Firebird. He's been discussing this with us, and it's something that we've wanted to do, to put somewhere in the village core for some time, and maybe pepper different bike facilities around the community. So we think this will encourage people to come downtown, bike downtown. The owner's going to, my understanding is, have a couple of very interesting bike racks created
Nice.
to put out. You can't see the area, but on his property, he owns the building just to the left.
Right.
My understanding is to be a lot more creative than the average generic bike rack, so that'll be kind of interesting. We spoke with Rick Jones. He's fine with the site. He seemed pretty interested in the project, and he doesn't anticipate any issues with snow removal and
Yep.
access. The funding is coming from a Go Vermont grant, a match from the trustees, and the remaining 300, maybe a little over, will come from the owner of Nest.
I love this idea, I love this concept, so I think we all like it a lot. So it's great, great that you had the enthusiasm and the energy on the committee to pursue this, so it's terrific.
Great.
Can you describe what kind of adjustments you can make of this?
I don't, excuse me, I don't remember the tool list, but pretty much everything. You should be able to do everything from a derailleur adjustment to, taking wheels on and off, taking off pedals, pumping up tires. The bike pump we're gonna do as an attachment, we're getting a slightly beefier one we're anticipating.
Manual
Um,
pump.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Now we have
question,
No, no compressor out there.
No compressor noise. And it's built for an environment where parts might need to be ordered and changed, so it's pretty easy to maintain. So the center portion, you can see about 6 or 8 tools hanging from very long cables.
Mhm.
The idea is you hang your bike from the posts in the middle, if need be, and use those. So we'll see how much use it gets. I think as a statement, it's a pretty inexpensive way to say that, we're a bike-friendly community, and
Yep.
and we want people to come down
Yep.
and use, alternate ways to get there.
Agreed.
It'll also be very handy if I've forgotten a few quarters and need to fill up my tire.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. I don't know if the pump we're getting is a high-pressure pump, but it could handle cars.
no.
You drive, yeah, I know, just kidding. You drive up on the curb for it?
Euro style, just bring it right up.
Right.
Any questions? You good? Okay, I will make a motion that we authorize staff to purchase a Darrow Fix-It bicycle repair tower and install it in the village right-of-way on the corner of Main Street and Railroad Avenue.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Jim, you're on, and in fact, I'm not even gonna introduce you. Go ahead, Jim, you take it away, and you got a number of items here for the wastewater treatment plant to discuss.
Yes, thank you for having me tonight, and I'll be brief. The first request of the trustees is to allow us to act as general contractor for an alkalinity construction project that we've had planned for a period of time. It was originally presented as a subcontractor or a contractor, general contractor type project, and this is a change to how we had presented it before, so we're asking permission to proceed. The engineer involved in the design says that at the value of the project, we're gonna have an extremely difficult time getting anybody to bid. Just the work environment is such as that, and we have the capability to do it in-house.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Jim? Everyone good with this?
I didn't honestly understand what the 95,000 was gonna cover. If
The
that was-
entire project.
So that's, at first I thought that was for the project management, but if that's.
No, that's
Okay.
the entire project, and that's the thing, it's a small project, it's not a multi-million dollar, so mobilization runs into the challenge,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, so they've been just having a temporary situation, you need to transition from that. Okay, I will make a motion that we allow wastewater facility staff to act as the general contractor in coordinating the installation of the alkalinity improvements project.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did you
Oh,
say-
yeah, aye, sorry.
Okay, sorry. I didn't,
For a second, there's nothing
I
else.
didn't know if you had some other, no. Okay, and so next piece is, go ahead, take it away.
Is the protein matrix pilot test. We've been approached to do some testing on something that's a problem for wastewater facilities all throughout the country, fats, oils, and grease.
Yeah,
This material breaks it down into a more manageable way to handle, and rather than it recongealing down the road, it actually makes it available better for anaerobic digestion. Because of our combined heat and power system that we have been running for the past 12+ years, as well as the anaerobic digester that we have,
right,
we're identified as a key facility to test the viability of this for that process.
okay.
And we're requesting permission to proceed as it involves other parties who are not village employees doing this pilot with us on site.
It'll be interesting to see how this works out for you.
We're looking forward to it as well.
And thanks for the picture, by the way. It was very helpful to see.
I had talked about the fatberg last
Yeah.
time I was in. Fat is a problem. This is a picture of a recent thing that made national press and worldwide press about a blockage in London.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah,
It's like
there's a combination of grease and other things.
Yeah,
So this is what my artery looks like, is what you're telling me, Jim.
it's exactly what it looks like, that.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Okay,
So I'll move that we allow the wastewater facility to proceed with the protein matrix pilot project.
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Andrew.
You got it.
Thank you.
All right,
The final item I have before you is a request for a purchasing policy waiver for a dechlorination monitoring instrument. We've been researching this for a number of years. We are required to chlorinate and disinfect effluent, but then at the wastewater facility, but then remove the chlorine, but prior to discharge to the environment.
right,
Because of the methods that are typically used, we're basically wasting an awful lot of chemical and not controlling the discharge as well as we would like to. This piece of equipment is one that's very specific to this type of monitoring.
okay,
In a straightforward analysis, there's one other piece of equipment out there, but our evaluation and that of the engineer is that the item we've requested the waiver for would be the best to pilot and test, and this would be, we're asking for approval to purchase, but we would proceed with a pilot test and a lease of this item until we determine that it works.
It
If it
works,
works,
yeah.
we buy it, if not, we can return it.
that's,
Done.
sounds, yeah, fine. Okay, appreciate the explanation and the brief explanation, thank you very much, Jim. I will make a motion that we waive the purchasing policy bid provision and allow the wastewater facility staff to proceed with direct purchase of a ChemScan mini sulfite monitoring unit.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Well,
Okay. Let me make sure we've got through everything. And now we have Pat, we've got a 2018 certificate of highway mileage.
right, we get one every year. We're at Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 roads, and a state highway. We have not increased, nor have we decreased our total mileage. It's 35.419, and we have a Class 1 lane, 1.289 miles.
Okay.
So since there's no change in mileage, all we need to do is to have you be authorized, actually, all of you, vote to sign the mileage certificate.
Okay. Sounds good. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve the certificate highway mileage year ending February 10, 2018.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'll
You
get
got
this
it.
in a second.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are on to trustee comments, concerns, and the reading file. And I am going to, I wanted to make a few comments about the water main break on Main Street, because there were quite a few issues surrounding it, as Andrew touched on a few of them. But I thought I'd wait until the beginning of the select board meet, the joint meeting with the select board. I'll just do a quick couple of minutes, because I think it might be useful for them to hear what happened too. And since this affected the village, it affected the village, but people in the town thought it also affected them, so it might be useful for us to take advantage of the situation and broadcast the information all at once. So I will do that in a few minutes when the select board we start the meeting. So other trustee comments, concerns? Everyone good? Pat, do we need to discuss anything in terms of schedules, or I think we're...
No, I think you
We're all
moved it,
set.
the trustee meeting schedule is down on the item 7.
Okay.
So part of the reading file, so
Okay.
I have no meetings I'm gonna be attending on that schedule. In absentia, perhaps.
You can always come to our meetings.
So who's the vote?
Okay. So Dan?
No comments.
Any comments? Everyone good? Okay, so we're gonna move on to the consent agenda, and I had two pieces that I wanna actually discuss with the consent agenda. This maybe was inappropriate, maybe I should have to amend the consent agenda, but I'll take a chance and put it by you now. Maybe, Pat, you can tell me I'm wrong.
No, I
But
won't.
there were there's one thing with the, in one item in the consent agenda, which was authorize manager to sign the CCRPC local match for the agreement to incorporate Design Five Corners into the CCRPC work plan. We pledged that we would make a $8,000 match. It's a $40,000. We're getting $32,000 from the federal government for that. We'd make the match, and I just wanted to point out that contract, that we haven't signed that, so that document needs to actually be signed by you and sent to the RPC. I just wanted to make a note of that and not just approve it, so we have that in the minutes. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was the Tree Advisory Committee logo. I was a little concerned about this, only because the Tree Advisory Committee is a village committee. It's funded by the village. It's an advisory committee for the Planning Commission, really. And I know that they had someone from the high school help them design the logo, but I'm a little concerned with the precedent of just us approving a village committee having a logo that we approve in the consent agenda without having them come here and explain why they need their own logo. I'm a little concerned about setting a precedent. Otherwise, the Planning Commission could ask for their own logo, and the Bike Walk Committee could get their own logo, and you could get your own logo. We could all start getting our own logos, and we want to maybe not set that precedent. We want to, if a committee wants their own logo, I think we want to say, yeah, you need to come in and explain why and why this is necessary and what you have in mind in having this.
Just
So-
just a question, sir, is it letterhead or is it a logo?
It's a logo. It's a little graphic that they
Okay.
will be putting on their letterhead.
It's right on the,
Right.
Yeah.
oh,
That's the
there's
one.
one there too.
And I have no objection to it, mind you. It's just, I would like us to talk about this. And I don't want to make a big deal out of something that's extremely well-intentioned. But I think it warrants a little bit of a discussion, that's all. That's my opinion.
So do you want it set for your next
Well,
meeting on the 28th?
I would make a motion.
Well, comment or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, I agree with you. The logo itself doesn't offend me. I don't think anyone would find offense looking at that logo, but the idea that representing the community, just as we have here, on top of our letterhead, the Village of Essex Junction logo, which is the train station, you have a Ferris wheel or
Yeah,
something from the
yeah.
Fairwinds in the background. It's the standard logo. To go off of that and develop their own logo, it could be confusing to somebody. Is this, when you see a document with that logo on it, my question would be, well, is this an actual Essex, if I was a resident of the community, I wasn't aware, is this an actual, Village of Essex Junction committee
Yeah.
letterhead, or is this what, is this something else? Because that's not their standard letterhead. So it adds confusion, I think.
Yes.
There's a potential for people to be confused if that's actual, or if it's, you know, nowadays, you never know when you're getting email or getting a letter or something, whether it's something, some kind of fraudulent thing, or it's actually that. I mean, and just to keep things consistent, I think it'd be nice if there was
Okay.
something
Okay.
to recognize that.
Any thoughts about this?
I don't have any concerns about them having a logo. I also don't think having communication with the committee would hurt in any way, just to make sure that we're all on the same page about the intent.
Maybe what we can do, I don't know what it's, you know, procedurally, I don't know if it's appropriate just for us to approve the consent agenda and then ask the tree committee to come in here to some future meeting and explain why they need this, and then we can accept it. Is that probably the best?
Well, you could
thing?
probably table that particular item, so if you tabled item 8.
Okay, I will move that we,
G.
I will move, for the sake of brevity, I will move that we table item G, acceptance of tree advisory committee logo, for now, so we're amending the consent agenda. I will move that we amend the consent agenda by tabling the acceptance of the tree advisory committee logo. I'll make that motion.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And so now I will make a motion that we approve the consent agenda
Second?
As amended?
as amended.
Second.
If you got it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great.
Just one last question.
Yes.
Putting it on a table means it can come off the table anytime you want. Do you want to try to have it for the next regularly
Yeah,
scheduled meeting?
it's yes, yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't have to, it's not,
Doesn't have
obviously
to
not
be.
an emergency, so it could wait, but when, I would say at their convenience.
Okay.
Okay. And so, I will make a motion that we take a 5-minute recess to welcome the Essex Select Board in anticipation of our joint meeting.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, good. So we're recessed for 5 minutes. Thank you. Good, so we,
Yep, so
Yep.
I'll call the February 13th, 2018 Select Board meeting to order.
and I will reopen the Essex Junction trustee meeting. So why don't you, since this is your meeting and we've done public to be heard, why don't you do your public to be heard?
Okay. It has Pledge of Allegiance on there again.
We
You want to do that?
did that already. We're happy to do it again.
It's not like communion, Mr. President. You can pledge more than once.
It's fine.
How about we do it one more time?
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Have it all rise and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So let's see, under agenda additions and changes, we had something on our place, right? Pat, under additions, agenda additions and changes, we had something on our place, I thought. Yes?
We did, it was added at the last meeting, but trustees, it's a memo from George to the select board and the trustees on some topics to generate discussion.
Yeah, it's from George and Max.
I'm sorry, and Max, I forgot you, Max, you got me.
And it's for business item 5E, right? Which is when we get to discuss agenda and facilitator for March 24th joint meeting.
Correct,
Okay, and that's it then, right?
that's it, yes, sir.
Okay. So, can I get a motion to amend the agenda to include this memo from myself and George for item 5, business item 5E?
So moved.
Thank you, Irene.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any further discussion? All those in favor of amending the agenda accordingly, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you.
And I just note that we've amended it, we accepted it on our agenda already.
Okay, great. Then next up is public to be heard.
I think you've got a gentleman here, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's- I just need to make it clear that-
Yeah.
Is anyone in the audience here to comment for the Essex Town Select Board meeting? Public to be heard.
For items that are not on the agenda?
Okay. I'm actually gonna claim to be heard here as a member of the public. I want to take a very quick moment. I was gonna do this at the trustee meeting, but I thought it would be more appropriate when you folks are here. I just want to briefly review what happened with the water line break on Main Street. 2 weeks ago, or last week, 2 weeks ago on Thursday, Village Public Works Department got a call at around 3 o'clock in the morning that there was a massive flood. They got over there. There was literally a man-made lake at the end of Densmore Drive. It was a major water line break. Rick Jones, Public Works Superintendent, said it was the worst break he's ever seen. It was somewhere in the order of 2 to 3 million gallons of water. Gushed out of the water main, washed out the road underneath part of Main Street and most of Densmore Drive. Densmore Drive collapsed. The village crew had to get there. They had to funnel off the water. They had to, the valves to shut off the water line were encased in ice. They had to cut through the ice, chisel through the ice to shut off the water. And then, this is all in the freezing cold and dark. And then they had to chisel down through Main Street. The water line was about 10 to 12 feet underground, so it wasn't a freeze. It looked like it had erupted from within. So they managed to get that under control all by around 7:30 in the morning. It was remarkable that they were able to do this. There was some concern at first about should we issue a boil water warning, and we made a decision to go ahead and do that. Anytime you lose pressure in a large water main like that, the recommendation is there's a remote possibility of some contamination getting into the water line from soil, not from sewage, but just from soil, and then backing up through the water line. Champlain Water District tested the water, but it took a sample, but it takes 24 hours to test to make sure there's no contamination in the water. So in the meantime, we had to issue a water boil warning for the village of Essex Junction. We couldn't really say exactly who had lost pressure. The water lines are just too complicated. So we issued it for Essex Junction. Interesting note, even though we issued it for Essex Junction and we wrote a press release making very clear that it was for Essex Junction, we had people from Essex Town who were on well water calling us asking if it was safe to drink their water. We had folks from other communities calling us asking if it was safe to drink their water. And I think this was pretty normal. I think anytime you do a major announcement that there might be some contamination, a lot of people want to speak to someone in authority, but the village office, I don't know if they probably got something on the order of 1,000 phone calls the next day, and which they were not surprisingly prepared to handle. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned from all this, but the bottom line is that there was no contamination. The test came back clean. The water line is under control. Densmore Drive is going to be rebuilt, and all is well. But it was a pretty exciting time, and a very wet and cold time for some people for about 24 hours.
George, can I ask you a question about
Yep.
that? Is there a policy on how the public is to be informed when something like this happens? And if there isn't, maybe that's something we...
Yeah, we would. If there is, I don't. It's buried deep in somewhere in the village papers or digital files. I don't know where it is.
I believe when you issue an order for boiling water, I believe the police dispatchers have a blast list to the news media, and they put it out, and that would be town-wide. I don't know if we have anything that would be specific for
Yeah.
the village only or a neighborhood only. That could reduce the number of calls, because if it only has an impact of just one neighborhood or two neighborhoods, everybody else would be worried about their water unnecessarily. So
Right.
we could look into
Yeah, it might
fine tuning that.
It warrants its own discussion at some point in the future, because we learned a lot of things like this, and, yeah.
And there wasn't an old pipe either.
No, this was a new pipe. I don't know, new, but it was not I watched them while they were digging this up, and this was not an old water line. It didn't break because it was falling apart. This was a new water line. It looked like a massive gush of pressure just went through the pipe and it just sort of exploded from within. But that's my completely unexpert opinion.
Well, that's a very good opinion, because I spoke with Jim Fay during that, and he said the same thing that Rick Jones said about it's probably the worst event in his 41 years.
Yeah, it
being
was pretty
involved.
massive.
Yes, and it was closer to 3 million gallons of water.
And as an interesting aside, it happened at the old brickyard, and a lot of old red bricks were flushed up onto Main Street in the parking lot. Fascinating. It's a little archaeological point.
Something from the Drury
Yeah.
background.
Okay, so that's my, and we'll talk more about this at some other point, but I wanted to thank you for.
Okay. Anyone else with public to be heard?
I have a much shorter one. Pat Scheidel is retiring very soon, and over the years, he's given lots of us lots of good advice. And one of the things that he has held up as an example of what we should do is always keep our select board hat on. So I have a presentation for him, and that is the book that he always recommends. It's the second book that Dr. Seuss ever wrote. It's called The 500 Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins, and it reminds us all that once you put on your select board hat, you can never take it off.
You can
As long as you're a select board member.
Oh, thank you, Irene.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations on your retirement.
Well, thank you. This. I will wear it well.
So this will be your last joint meeting then?
This is the last joint meeting, yes. And I'm sure you'll be all very happy to see the new person come here for your next joint meeting, but I've been very blessed, if you will, that we've had this opportunity to have the joint meetings. When I first came to work for the community, that was a pretty remote concept to fathom. So you all deserve the credit for that, so thank you all for doing that.
Yes, you played a major role in it, Pat. You
Huge role.
absolutely did. I don't think it would have been happened if you hadn't been here, honestly.
You're leaving big shoes
I don't want to
to
be
fill.
rude, but you know, I just,
You gonna read that in front of us now?
Read that loud. Okay. Anybody else then for public to be heard? Okay, thank you. All right.
Next, I will let you take the first agenda item.
Okay, so business item 5A, it's the termination of employment subcontracting agreement. And that was an agreement that we had with Pat, and it went through, it was going to be through April? I think?
yes,
And because you're retiring on officially the 28th, we need to terminate that subcontracting agreement so that we can then do the next piece, which is the, put a new one out there. So, everyone's had a chance to look at that. It's pretty simple. It says the undersigned parties agree to and hereby do terminate the employment subcontracting agreement entered into by them on June 9th, 2015, as amended, effective as of February 28th, 2018. All parties waive any further notice of the termination. And,
Lawyers have looked at it.
pardon?
The lawyers have looked at it.
Okay, yeah, and yeah, it's been vetted by the attorney. And we're looking for, on the select board side, you to allow the chair to sign this on the select board's behalf. Any questions? Pretty straightforward. We're good, okay. Can I have a motion to allow the chair to sign this? Wait.
I move that we allow the chair of the select board, Max Levy, to sign the termination of employment subcontracting agreement dated June 9th, 2015, on behalf of the select board.
Thank you, Mike. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Harry. Any further discussion on that one? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes 5-0, thank you.
Okay, and I'll make actually, do Andrew or Dan, do I hear a motion to allow me to sign the termination of employment subcontracting agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's passed. We'll sign this when we get to it.
The next item of business is 5B, and that's the updated memorandum of understanding regarding the unified manager.
Yeah, and we met with the town and village attorney, Dave Barra and Bill Ellis, on this. I think we had several meetings about this, and we had the final one last week. And they recommended that we update this. They reminded us that this is a working document. When we sign the new MOU, it's not as if we're signing something that can't be unsigned or amended further on, but they looked at the new contract coming in, and they wanted us, they made some recommended changes, and I'm assuming that everyone's read it. Do you want us to go over it, or do you want to have some discussion about it? I think, obviously, we're going to discuss it, but that's where we are. They made these recommendations. And Max and I made them as well, and so. And I don't know if I can, do I need to go over them, or anyone have some questions about
And
these?
it's set up to be reviewed on a yearly basis.
Yes,
Right?
yeah. And one of the key things was because, I think one of the points that I thought would be interesting for this joint meeting to discuss, and we don't have to work it out right now, but they recommended that we really set up a schedule of meeting every other month jointly, that we firmly set that up, if for no other reason than to ask them, make sure we're all on the same page with the manager, because we said we're going to be evaluating the manager moving forward. We want to make sure that that evaluation is being done jointly. The manager isn't being evaluated one way by one board and another way by the different board, or is pleasing one board and displeasing another. So they recommended that we make sure we set up among ourselves, between the two boards, a fixed schedule of bi-monthly meetings. And that's part of this MOU. And I think the rest of it is explanatory.
Right, and some of those meetings may be able to be all in open session, but if it's gonna be the evaluation piece of an official, then likely those will be in executive session.
Okay. I don't think we need, actually, we do need a motion. We need a motion to sign this.
Before you
Yeah,
guys,
we're
Yes,
gonna-
yes. Oh, yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah, we definitely need discussion.
I only just noticed one quick thing, and that's there's 2 section 4s. So if we were gonna sign this tonight, I don't know how much weight that
Uh-oh.
carries, or how important that is.
Oh, my goodness. Right, section 4 and there should be section 5, Roman numeral 5. We got 2 Roman numerals.
Editorial changes can be made without having to come back for another vote.
Okay, great.
It's not on the page we're signing, unfortunately.
Okay, Sue?
I have some comments and questions, I
Yes.
guess. So under section 3, the annual review, I found it kind of weak in terms of setting some sort of structure, especially the reference to from time to time versus there being some sort of a actual, my suggestion was prior to the start of the performance period, that you establish the goals and objectives so that it's clear going into the performance period. And then,
That's section 2, right?
section 3, annual
But
review.
section 2 defines the process of developing those, doesn't it?
Yes, I was okay with section 2. What I'm referencing is section 3, talking about the annual review.
Okay.
I mean, all it says in section 2 is that
I-
that they be reduced to writing, but it doesn't talk about a time frame.
Okay. So you wanna, how would you recommend, do you recommend we amend the language?
Yeah, and the other comment I would make is around, so, starting at the top, the town and the village shall annually review and evaluate the unified managers, not just accomplishments of the goals and objectives, but the performance of how and what they did in support of those goals and objectives. So if you're just focusing on accomplishments, you're not looking at how they accomplished what they did, which I think is a key part of it. And then, this review and evaluation shall be in accordance with specific criteria. There's kind of a standard to use SMART goals to make sure that something is measurable and attainable and all that kind of stuff. So specific is one piece of it. I don't know if that makes it very clear, like, that you're establishing the right kind of goals.
So specific and measurable?
It's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and there's a time constraint, is what a SMART goal is.
If I can read, Sue, maybe, so what we would say is the town and the village shall annually review and evaluate the unified manager's accomplishment of the goals and objectives established pursuant to section 2 above, and the manager's performance in achieving those goals and objectives, period. Is
Sure.
that- Okay.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
Okay. This review and evaluation shall be in accordance with specific, measurable, and achievable criteria
That sounds good.
developed jointly from time to time by the town and village and the unified manager.
Developed jointly prior to the start of the performance period. Would have been,
Instead of time to time.
time to time sounds very vague,
Okay.
very wishy-washy, to be technical about it.
Yeah, that's technical.
Wishy-washy is really good. I like it.
So, are you okay with
Yeah.
that? Should I move on? Should I keep going?
I have a
Section,
question, excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned time constrained. Is the last change that we made covering the time constrained nature of those criteria?
it's not, I mean, my suggestion would be to just reference SMART goals, but if that's not something that you feel is translatable, then
Can we add the word time constrained after achievable?
sure.
So that
Okay.
we do encompass all those? Thank you, sorry to interrupt.
Okay, I'm a little, so so how would you read that, Irene?
So it would be, shall be in accordance with specific measurable, achievable, and time constrained criteria.
Time constrained?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Developed jointly. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Well, SMART goal, that's sort of a definition of SMART goals is what we're
Yeah,
doing.
it's a SMART, SMART.
Is that a trademark or
It's a thing.
something?
It's, like,
It might be easier just
It's
to
an HR
use the acronym SMART
Yeah.
instead of
Right.
trying to define
that's,
SMART.
Why don't we
that's,
put,
Which
why
I
don't we
think Lucy
put
was saying.
parentheses S-M-A-R-T, and then we'll spell it out.
that's absolutely fine, I just didn't wanna
I
assume
think we
that it
should
was
spell it out.
understandable.
I've never heard of it.
Never heard before.
Yeah.
It's a very common.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Measure.
And then the next, just to be clear, so the next sentence is, this review and evaluation shall be in accordance with specific criteria, parentheses, wait a second, let me see, I'm losing this. Prior, the, parentheses, SMART goals, I'm sorry, specific, measurable, and achievable, and time constrained, parentheses, SMART, developed jointly,
I said
prior to the start of the performance period by the town and village, and the unified manager.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
Is there an R in SMART that we're missing?
It is, it's relevant.
Oh, relevant.
Otherwise, it's from Boston.
Thank you.
It's smack.
Okay. Yeah, Boston, we just don't do those, so, all right.
So does that mean that these,
Mike?
does that mean that these have to be defined prior to July 1?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would make the most sense, that way
because
that,
that's when he started,
Yeah.
or that's the fiscal.
that he
year.
knows what he's being
Measured.
measured against, right? Yeah.
It's a requirement, I would say.
Is it okay if I keep going?
Okay.
Sure. You're on the roll, so.
Well, kind of. Section 4, the first section 4. The only comment I had here was there is a reference to discussing any issues or concerns, and evaluations are also really helpful in highlighting what's being done well, so that you reinforce that behavior. So I would put that positive in there too, that it's
Do
not
you have a
just.
recommendation for what the wording should be?
Let's see, for the express purpose of discussing any issues or concerns or to reinforce good performance. You see something that's being done well, you wanna make sure
Right.
they know that,
To continue doing that,
Right.
sure.
and sooner than later, right?
Yep.
And then, under the second section 4, I just had a question, there's a reference to, that the town select board and village trustees acknowledge and affirm that they will not interfere in town or village operations, including interacting with staff without the unified manager's specific approval. And I didn't know, does that same guideline apply to the general public?
No, it applies to, it's in our charters.
Right.
And both our charters say, you know, that they don't specifically spell it out. And we thought it would be good coming in with Evan coming in new, that he gets, we all remind ourselves of this. And it just says the manager runs the day-to-day operation and we run the manager, but we don't attempt to run the village or the town ourselves. We don't go around the manager. I don't know.
Pat has a comment.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
In answer to Sue's question about does it apply to the general public, if you were to go up to the highway garage, you would see employees only sign.
Yeah.
That's for the safety of the general public, so they wouldn't be able to interact either with the people doing the work there or the machinery or anything like that. So
Understand.
where those signs would be the only time that the public would not be encouraged to.
Talk directly.
I don't know if I'm answering you, are we answering your question, or are we not getting at the point you're trying to
Well,
make?
you answered.
But I guess the point I was trying to make, is there a constraint on the elected officials that is not on the general public? And it sounds like that is a
Yes.
valid thing, that
Yes.
because it's in the
Yeah.
charter.
Yeah.
Yes.
What else?
No, I'm good,
That's good, all right.
that's what I got.
Good feedback, thank you, Sue. Other comments? Ready, Mike? Okay, so, can we, how can we approve this with these,
As amended.
can we approve them as amended?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody comfortable with that? You know what was amended? Okay. Entertain a motion then?
I think we're gonna do
I
two
move,
votes.
Right.
I move the select board approve the memorandum of understanding regarding the unified manager as amended on 13 February 2018.
Thank you, Mike. Do I have a second on it?
Second.
Thank you, Sue. Any further discussion of approving this MOU as amended? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you again.
Okay, and trustees, do I hear a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding for the unified manager as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? Sue, I think just one thing, before we all leave, if you and I could sit with Mary Ann and make sure we got all the wording of the changes exactly right. I think we all agreed on it, but I just want to make sure, so just
Absolutely.
take another.
I have it on here.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good, thank you.
Okay, then, moving right along, on, the select board 5, what is it, 5, C, thank you, is approval of resolution in appreciation of Patrick C. Scheidel. So,
Where are you going?
Yeah, lock the door.
Who would like to read this? Who feels like reading this? Elaine, do you want to read this? You ready to read this?
I'd be delighted.
You want to read it? We've got it on fancy
But I want
paper.
Pat to be here.
Well, I know, why did you
Well-
go Elaine?
He's shy.
what I would like to propose is, at town meeting, Article 1, which is the, report of the officers. In there is a letter from the select board that references his retirement. So that would make it germane, I think, to be able to have somebody, and I don't know who the right person would be to read it at town meeting, but take a couple of minutes to present it to him at that point. And just have tonight be the time to be able to, approve it for that. Is that reasonable?
I would propose that Susan, her term is ending and she is the select board clerk, that she gets to read it at town meeting.
But,
Oh.
but, yes, but if it were just a select, yeah.
Yeah.
But
That sounds
Is that
good.
okay? Is that, all right, very good. Is everybody okay with that? Trustees,
Yeah.
good with that?
It's not for us to say, but yes, it sounds like a good idea.
Okay, yeah, that's our practice for whoever the clerk is, and Sue is our clerk to read
Sounds
it.
good.
But it's a joint resolution, that's why I wasn't sure.
So we don't need to read it tonight, in other words, we're just look at the language, we don't need to read it aloud, or what? I'm not,
It's in the public record. We normally read it at our meetings, but it's a pretty long one,
It is a pretty long one.
yeah. So it's okay if we just approve with that, and we'll do that at town meeting, we'll just take a couple minutes to do that. Mike?
Is this where we can weigh in with the suggestion? So, the very last whereas, I'd like to add in that Pat has honorably served his country as a hospital corpsman in the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam conflict.
oh, okay.
But how are we going to, we won't be able to sign it tonight then, because we won't have the original, if we have that.
Can we sign it on town meeting day?
Or to stop by
Or
beforehand.
just stop by before?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we probably like to get it put in the frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yep.
Well, we also have a meeting next Monday, so we could have it there to sign as well.
Okay, for us, okay. So,
Okay,
Yep. Sounds good.
that's if we want to add that piece that Mike,
I think that's a good.
That's good, I think that does, yeah.
26 we have a meeting.
Oh, it's not next.
okay.
okay, so we'll amend it with adding that piece that Mike said. Any other comments? Okay. So can I have a motion from the select board to approve the resolution in appreciation of Patrick C. Scheidel as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Sue. Do I have a second?
Okay.
Doreen, all those in favor of the resolution with as amended, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, and I will ask for the same motion from the trustees.
So
I'll move we approve the resolution for Pat Scheidel as amended.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Fantastic.
Okay.
So, go ahead, Max.
All right.
So, I'm sorry, just a procedural question, nothing to do with language or anything else. Do we want Greg to have the corrected copy of this, and we go into the office sometime between now and Monday to sign it on the
Yeah,
down?
we have a meeting,
A week, it's 2 weeks,
It's
yeah.
the 26th.
yeah, it'd be good if you can go in, I guess, and sign it in advance to make sure we can get it signed and put in a frame.
Okay.
So, okay? And anyone that's missed, we can do it in 2 weeks.
So, Pat, we rescinded the resolution.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. No break. Okay, so now we're on to item 5, at least on the select board agenda, item 5,
It's on our agenda too.
but it's not 5D.
Okay.
And that's the memo from Greg Duggan and Travis regarding the welcoming of the new municipal manager, Evan Teach. So, in our packet, there we have that memo, and the select board had seen this in the consent agenda last week, right?
It's slightly modified.
Okay. So the idea was just to make sure that we have a sort of a complete plan, at least for the very beginning days of having Evan here, so that he can be introduced to the right folks, have the right documents sent in advance that he can read and so on, so.
Yeah, I thought one of the ideas that we had in just going over this, I mean, we can talk about the rest of this, but I wanted to make a note of saying one of the best ways to introduce Evan to us, you know, we've all met him, but when he comes here and sort of introduce him to the process, is he is coming on the 23rd, and the following week, we have both a select board and a trustee meeting. Pat is still gonna be manager. We thought it would be really helpful if Evan came and just observed. He went to a select board meeting, observed Pat in action and how Pat interacts and runs the select board, not runs, but manages the select board meeting. And same thing for the trustees, so that he can get a sense of what the expectations are, what the process is, the interpersonal dynamics and everything like that. And we also thought at the beginning of those two meetings, we could maybe take about 15 minutes at the start of the meeting to just have it be open. Public would be welcome to come in, say hi to Evan, have some just general discussion, and then each board at its meeting, as a subsequent meeting, would begin their meeting and have a normal business meeting.
And that would cover the introductions to elected officials.
Right.
Line item, right?
Right. That sound reasonable?
I find it really awkward that we have the new manager and the retiring manager in the same room. I would like to see Evan come in and do whatever he does and not be constrained or living up to expectations of how things are done now. I really prefer that if he wants to see what it looks like, watch it on TV, but to have him in the room, I don't know if that's something I think is.
But having him watch and observe doesn't mean that's what he will have to replicate, but he can at least see what it was, and then he could, with that, perhaps even make better ideas as to what changes he thinks might be appropriate. Pat, you've been in that position before.
Well, no, frankly, I haven't.
So you have.
No, the old guy has never been around when I've showed up in previous jobs. I would maybe ask Evan what he would prefer.
It's fine.
And I would be more than happy to do whatever, to make the new manager feel comfortable, is the whole goal. So, and I certainly wouldn't want to be the one that would make him uncomfortable. I don't think I would, but, you know, who knows?
Andrew?
I'd personally prefer to not start off his first day or first week in his new role as municipal manager to not come to the meeting that he's unexpected to come to. I'm not remembering 100% if it says in our charter that the manager is required to be here, but I think that that's the general practice at least.
Yes.
That's right.
And so having the manager physically being on the job but then not being here, it doesn't feel good. I prefer that he actually be here, even if it is just to sit and observe.
Let me interject here before we go. Evan is gonna be here on the
He's traveling here on the
Is
20th.
traveling here. He's going to physically be present for the final week of Pat's tenure. So, you know, I guess he could go out on Monday and Tuesday and do something else, but I mean, it's an opportunity for him to come and be in our live meeting. That was really what we were thinking, and, yeah, but he doesn't have to, if we don't say you. But then again, the public is welcome to come to our meeting, so we can't really stop him from coming in.
I was gonna bring that up. Public's welcome. I don't think we can ban him from coming to our meeting.
And we just assumed that he would be there and we'd sort of say, acknowledge him and take some time to welcome him. I kind of embellished the rest of it, I'm sorry. But
No, that's,
Mike?
I would almost submit that he's not gonna be sizing Pat up as much as he's gonna be sizing up the 10 of us.
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest with you, so for that reason alone, I think he should be able to be there. I can't say that I didn't have, my initial reaction wasn't the same as Irene's, that it should be solo, but the more I think about it, I think it's an opportunity for him to size. All due respect to Patrick, he's not gonna care the way Patrick
No.
ran things.
No,
He's the new
Do his
boss.
own thing.
So-
We weren't recommending that he run the meeting.
No, I understand that.
But
I
sit in the
understand
manager's
that,
chair
but
and be the manager at the meeting.
Well, he wouldn't come and run the meeting, and he's not gonna be manage the meeting,
I
he's
just-
just gonna come to,
As
but
an
we were
observer.
saying, we're gonna make time on the agenda to welcome him, acknowledge his presence, and say, and introduce him to Channel 17 and the rest of us and so forth. That wasn't to ask him to actually run the meeting.
So clarification, just as Pat was saying, so Evan will not be seated at the table with a nameplate. He'll be seated in the audience, I assume, or what are you saying with the manager nameplate and everything there, or, no, you're the manager.
No, he's the manager, but we would put him at the table. He
Okay.
doesn't have to be at the
That's
table.
fine, I mean, he can be at the table, wherever, I mean, obviously, anybody from the public can be at our meeting, so we can't ban him from the
No.
meeting. And to recognize him at the meeting, if you want him to sit, I have no problem, he wants to sit at the table somewhere at the end with whoever, but, to have a nameplate that says manager, town manager, I think that would be a little awkward, but.
But he is.
But it is.
Yeah, but he's
Yeah.
not sworn in at that point.
No,
He's
no, he's not the
he's
manager
going to
until
become,
the
yeah,
first of March.
to the first of March, right. So it's kind of a lame duck type thing here, you know?
I've been that for quite a while lately. And it's okay to be named
Yeah.
up. I've got the walk down and everything.
And he could just observe
Right,
and
right.
see, and then
That's
he'll have
fine.
his own style, I'm sure,
Yeah.
and not necessarily be influenced at all by the way we've been doing it, because the way you've been doing it, there's probably better ways to do things, right? I mean, that's one of the exciting things that we know to come. So,
It probably doesn't need to be said, but maybe it's just worthwhile to just say to him that, you know, we expect him to come with a clean slate and make it his own and, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Hit the ground running.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to imply that we watch Pat, we want you to do exactly what he
Right.
does.
No.
that was the
You don't
impression, that was not. the
Okay, I'm
impression.
sorry, I should have, and forgive me, I think that's my fault, so I'm sorry that I triggered all this. Inappropriate language.
Irene?
The origin of my comment is something that was said a couple of meetings ago when we met with you, and I asked if other towns' managers often overlap, and I recall the response being no. So because this is an unusual situation, I'm just feeling my way, wondering what is appropriate, given that most towns don't have an overlap. So that's all. Just want to explain where that came from.
And I think that we would make it clear to Evan that if he for some reason is busy, he doesn't start those days, so if he really had other business to do, he doesn't have to come, he doesn't have to show up, there's not an expectation, so. But in lining up the agenda, you know what, we can think about this, let's process this. Since each of us will be, Max and the rest of you will be formulating your select board agenda, and we'll be doing the same for the trustees, maybe we'll do two different things, but that was the idea.
Right.
And if we don't do it, then we'll have to come up with some other way of introducing ourselves as a group. But I mean, Evan, we've already all met Evan, so it's not really that big a deal, and
Yeah, you all hire.
certainly getting to know enough of him.
But it would allow also the public then
Right.
to be able to meet him as well. right?
So the other thing that we had in mind was that on the morning of the 26th at 81 Main Street, there would just be a period of where, as it says right here, staff could come and have bagels and coffee with Evan, say hi. That's one opportunity. We're trying to probably create a number of opportunities. Committees, in terms of all the village and town committees, I think that to organize some event where all of the committees, I think we'd probably be talking about 100 people. And to assume that that's gonna be helpful to him, I don't think it would be helpful to him. I think it would be confusing to him. So I would recommend that what we do is provide a list of committees and their agenda, and I think we've already done that. We sent him lists of village committees and a schedule, and as they meet in the course of his time here, his first few months here, he goes to committee meetings,
You can pick and choose which ones.
planning commission meetings, et cetera, and meet those people. But I think that to try to bring all the committee members together and have him understand everything, I think it'd be overwhelming. I think the priority here would be to get to see staff first,
Absolutely.
okay? We talked about meeting managers from other communities. We were going to do that with him and organize. Pat, you said that there is a.
Yeah, there's a
like
standard
monthly meeting.
monthly meeting for lunch with the county managers, and I was talking to Don Francis not too long ago about having a quick lunch just with the bordering community managers, Williston, South Burlington, Colchester, just to say, okay, these are the folks that, you know, you can see in a stone's throw anytime you want. The other folks are more outlining, and then, of course, there's the biannual meeting for all the state managers, but that's not really the case. He'll have plenty of people to meet.
Right. And then I don't want to, you know what, why don't you talk about Evan coming to your town meeting? So that's the next big event. And
Right, during town meeting, we have the community dinner at 6:30. But that would be a good time to have an introduction of Evan to the folks who are at that dinner, and then allow that to be a meet and greet, and he can wander around table to table and actually talk to, opportunity to meet a lot of people, for a lot of people to meet him during that part of the town meeting. 'Cause, you know,
I will not be at that dinner.
right, you won't be there.
No.
So it'll be really focused on the dinner as a meet and greet for the new guy coming in, and then, you know, at town meeting, when we do our business, we'll introduce, you know, do the official introductions, and obviously we'll say a few words about Pat's retirement at that point. So we'll keep those two things separate.
There's a overkill here.
yeah,
Does that sound reasonable, though, to have that community dinner be a meet and greet? Great,
Good
you know.
time.
yeah, the timing is right,
Together.
instead of having a public event and yeah, so great. And then we kind of thought, in terms of actually meeting, I mean, he's met some department heads and staff already, but I think it would be valuable for him to meet department heads in their setting, to go to the Essex Free Library and meet the people up there, go to the wastewater plant and meet Jim and the staff down there, police department, et cetera. And so what we were kind of thinking is we could do, this would obviously have to take place during the day. So we will work out, Max and I, and maybe Greg and Lauren, I'm not sure, depending on your availability. We would have like maybe a little delegation, set up a schedule, don't have to do it all at once, we could spread it out over a couple of days and bring him around and introduce him to the various department heads. Give us some time for Evan to interact with them and talk about stuff and see what they do. Does that sound reasonable? Good?
Everybody okay?
And we'll probably start doing that since he's here on the 23rd. We may start doing that before he actually takes on. Try to maybe do some of it during the week, the following week.
It's not gonna happen in one day.
Yeah.
I think that's smart.
Okay. And,
Community partners?
yeah, again, you know, there are a number of, you know, folks here who he probably needs to meet at some point. For example, Global Foundries, we would like Evan to get over to Global Foundries and do the tour and meet the folks over there so they feel comfortable calling him if necessary. And he gets a sense of what they're about. Same thing with the fairgrounds. We talked about several other community partners. And again, I think what I could do, and Max could do, is we could try to set that up and go with him on those tours. And I would keep the trustees informed, and Max would keep the select board informed, and you'd be welcome to join us on those. I don't think they would constitute meetings, I think they would just be opportunities for us to,
If three or more
community.
go, it needs to be warned.
And if someone thinks, you know,
need to let me
doing
know
it.
if you're gonna be there, you might run into me in the hallway. So.
No, we've got, we'll try to, we'll just go like
Stay in
this.
the bathroom.
I can't participate in the
Yeah.
tour,
We
but
won't, we'll pretend we don't know you.
There's the love.
We'll keep you out of trouble.
Stay home
And
that
if
day.
anyone thinks of someone that we should be introducing him to that we are not introducing him to, then let us know, or let him know. We'll try to communicate that to him.
So,
Sooner or later, it'll all sort itself out. Okay.
so I think that's all the introductions, right? Did we miss any? Anyone?
Are you gonna share a list of the people, of the companies that you were thinking of bringing him around to?
Yeah,
so
that's
that
what
we
George
can-
is saying, that we're gonna be keeping you informed of
Right.
that, and then, so, yeah, that would need to be
Okay.
in consent, I guess.
I mean, it's, if you think of any, Mike, just let us know
Mhm.
what your thoughts are. Right now, to me, the big two are, because the village does so much, has so much interaction with the fairgrounds, we need to bring them over there to have him meet Tim Shea.
Yeah,
And same thing for Global Foundries.
right.
So those are the two that I have in mind right now. Beyond that, any number of them.
I'd add Bludget to the list.
Yeah.
Blodgett, okay.
Yeah.
Autumn Park.
Yeah,
Bottom Harp.
the Economic Development
Revision.
Commission
Revision
has a
software.
great list of businesses, and they're actually by number of employees. We probably have, you know, the bigger ones as a priority first, and then, you know,
I'm
sort
sure
of
the
go down that
EDC
list.
would be happy to help with those introductions.
Yeah, well, you know what, my memory is failing me, so forgive me. Because when we were talking about this, I think we actually decided it might not be bad for the Economic Development, Essex, for the EDC to get involved in this, and they could probably orchestrate a lot of these meetings with him.
Great opportunity,
Yeah.
you know.
And also members of the board and trustees who interact with boards, committees, or commissions can tell, I've been in the energy committee meetings, and Channel 17 meeting is, with regional planning meetings, those kind of things, so
Right.
that you can get information directly from you.
Okay.
Okay, good. So we talked about site visits too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, it's not an exhaustive list of documents, we don't wanna certainly overwhelm them, but we wanted to at least identify ones that we thought might be the most appropriate to send to him in advance. Do you agree with this list, or do you think there's some that should come off or be added? We're open to feedback. Sue?
I thought the town and village charters should be part of it.
I thought we did this list already.
Yeah.
We kind of, we're a little out of sync, because I recommended we send Evan some documents, because we don't want him just sitting out there in the Midwest doing nothing. So we
You already sent
we sent him our stuff.
Okay.
We didn't send him the charter. We figured the charter is pretty obvious online, so he could see that.
A pointer then, maybe not the actual document, but pointer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we also talked about the LDC and our ordinances.
Yeah, I
Those
mean,
are the other
those are
ones.
big.
They're big, but they live online.
Yeah, I mean, we sent him the budget that we just approved tonight, the employee association contract, the design five corners thing, a list of our upcoming capital projects for the year.
I'd venture to bet that he's reviewed every one of these documents already, but I'm not gonna say that for sure, but I'd say it's a fair bet,
Probably.
before he even met with us,
Yeah,
before
probably.
the interview.
I'm sure he's had the budget and the audit.
Greg, if I can put you on the spot, have any of these gone to him yet through the Dropbox?
Not yet.
Yeah, okay. Irene?
How about the Jeff and Mary document that talks about consolidation plans? Sets the vision out there for him, so
Right,
he has a sense.
the car,
Yeah.
Morris
Mhm.
report?
Okay.
Good.
I thought the TGIA report should go to him.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then the other one, I had actually for you, Greg, we used to, in our select board, in the consent, there used to be a list of activities that were pending and some status. And I think that would be helpful for him to have as well, like what the parking lot is for
Okay,
the
yeah.
town. I don't know if that's being maintained or can be updated, that would be great.
Great, good suggestion.
Trustees, well, good with this? We're good with this.
Okay. He's gonna be
Okay.
drinking from fire hose there.
Okay.
But he
so I think we're ready to move on. Without, if no one has any other further comments or suggestions for additions for Evan Cumming, then we'll move on to the next agenda item. Good? Yeah. So first order of business, we wanted to, let me first of all say, the last time we had a joint meeting, we talked about a facilitator for the meeting in March that we're going to be having. And we all agreed that we wanted a facilitator, and we weren't really sure what kind of facilitator, who we were gonna hire, et cetera. We haven't picked anybody out, and I think if we jointly wanted to come up with the list and then discuss the pros and the cons of individuals, we would probably need to do that in executive session, because it might get into personalities or characteristics or whatever, financials, and so we really were kind of at a loss about how to approach this, because we didn't want to like generate a list and then all go into executive session to talk about this and discuss possible contracts. One suggestion that we had was to put the decision on hold until we discuss a few other things about what we're going to be doing at this meeting, to get a sense of what kind of a facilitator we would like. And then at the end of it, see if everyone is okay with Max and Greg and I coming up with a couple of different names and contacting a couple of different people and seeing if one of those people is available. And is that what we,
Based on the attributes that.
based on the attributes that we
all
think we're gonna
collectively-
need for the March meeting?
So before we get that far,
Yes.
I want to make sure that these boards know our goals for that meeting.
Right.
And in looking at this memo, I think we might need to have some additional conversation before we decide upon a facilitator.
Right.
Can I just take a minute or two just to ask some questions about this memo to get the conversation started?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so the first part where it says, is there agreement that our general goal is to propose changes to the town and village charters? That's a big assumption. And I think that's not the goal. It could be an outcome of the conversation. But I don't want any of us on these boards to be accused of creating a solution in search of a problem. And I want us to make sure that we are asking the right questions. And I think the goal really is to begin exploring potential changes in governance that could be effective in helping us achieve consolidation goals. It's part of a bigger conversation. And I'm wondering if, instead of talking about charter changes right away, we identify the questions we have. What are the issues that a potential change in governance could solve? What are the benefits that a potential change in governance could provide? And without going into a presumed or an assumption of a particular kind of change of governance. We talk a lot about having one board, and we think we might be getting there. We really need to have a more comprehensive conversation about it before we actually start planning for that. We haven't talked about it at all. We haven't talked about whether that's exactly what we need to do. So I guess what I'm saying is perhaps we should back up the littlest bit and have a conversation. I think a facilitator is a good idea to help us put a fence around the pasture of what we're trying to talk about.
Well, okay, so that's exactly the point that, and you're defining exactly what we were struggling with, which is that we want a facilitator. It seems like this was our thought, and Greg helped us with this too, in just sort of teasing this out. We want a facilitator that can help us sort of generalize and focus and decide what our priorities are.
Yes.
Okay? We don't, as opposed to a facilitator who has a lot of expertise in some specific piece of government or law or finance.
Right.
So we want a kind of a generalist who can facilitate kind of a general conversation about goals and process, and help us focus those at the meeting so that we know what we're doing going forward. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So,
I thought we were even one step back from that, and I thought the intent of the session on, is it the 23rd
Third, I think.
of March, was to have it be a learning experience where we have different knowledge sources to help expand our understandings about what the opportunities and options are.
Right, we did talk about that too.
It seems like that might be actually after we come up with kind of the first piece to say, really, what is it we're thinking the goals are? And then part of that would be, what learning then do we need in order to achieve that? And I think that's where those pieces might come in. Right.
I don't disagree with any of the points that have been made around this subject. What I'm really concerned about, though, is that we've got an awful lot of work to do and not a lot of time to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if March the 23rd, after hearing the ideas that are coming forward here tonight, I'm wondering if the 23rd of March is doable, based on the kind of conversations we have to have ahead of time. I'm just throwing that out there. Even if we got our stuff together in 2 weeks, I'm just gonna arbitrarily pick a time frame, 2 or 3 weeks. That doesn't preclude that we're gonna be able to get the person that we think is best suited to help lead us through this with that short a time frame. So I'm not sure I've got a great solution for that, other than to say, if we're gonna have this meeting ahead of time, or a series of meetings ahead of time, we best get after it.
I think what if we look at item number 2, okay, what are our priorities for continuing our discussion of governance? What do we hope to achieve with a consolidated government? And we don't even have to say that. We can just say, what do we hope to achieve? What are our concerns? So if we just said, that's the agenda for the March 23rd meeting. It's very wide open.
Right.
We're not saying we're going to spend March 23rd forming the new government, or we're not even sure that that's where we're headed. We're just gonna, I thought it would be, the 10 of us would each sort of say, here's what I would go around and say, here's what I think we should be talking about, here's what I think we should be doing, and see where the parts of overlap are, see what the commonality is, and then start to go forward from there.
And the facilitator would help to us to get to that list of what the answers to these, at least begin to answer these questions.
Then I might have misunderstood this series of events then. I mean, if we're all talking about, if we're remembering what we brought up at earlier meetings as potential bullet items for this meeting on the 23rd, then I retract what I said
Okay.
earlier.
Can I just make a point of order?
I was kind of thinking that the way this was going, that we were gonna have that meeting or series of meetings before we chose the facilitator. But if I'm mistaken, then I'm mistaken. Sorry.
There's been an awful lot of mention of the 23rd. I believe you chose the 24th.
Sorry,
Saturday.
let me check the date.
Yes.
No, it is. I double checked.
So I didn't even try to guess, I just
It's
said the
Saturday, the
Saturday the
24th, and
24th.
we've rented Essex High School from 10 to 2. We're gonna have coffee and refreshments for people coming in. We don't know how many members of the public will be there, but we are anticipating some, and we're also having lunch. So we're trying to make it just as open as possible.
Right.
And I totally hear you, Mike, but my response would be, we've gotta start somewhere. And we're talking about what we're gonna talk about, and at some point, I think we just have to bite the bullet and just start talking about it. And
I
see where it
retract
takes
my
us.
earlier statement. It sounds to me like we're kind of developing that
Yeah.
first meeting agenda. And that's not the feeling I got when we first got started, so. Thank you
Irene,
for the
you had your
clarification.
hand up, you wanted to say.
I just want to make sure we look back at history and examine some of the stumbling blocks to figure out where we need to go next.
Yeah.
Because we've had some hurdles, we've had some walls that we've hit, to go around them and say, well, we really have to work on this. You know, the trust issue's been a big issue.
Yeah.
I think we need to deal with that head on.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and those would be great, the great things to be able to identify jointly and at the 24th.
Can I just point out on, like, the third item on the memo? I would not want to set any dates at all. This is an open-end conversation. We have
That's
no
fine.
idea where it's gonna go, and I don't want anybody to be accused of pushing the community towards a decision that they're not ready to make.
Okay, I just want to make it, I hear you, Elaine, and I just want to make it clear that these were ideas that we might bring up at that meeting.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And as an aside, the only reason we put down the charter is that if we think of the Essex Governance Group, and they made a recommendation for changing how we do town meeting,
They did.
and we've also talked about possibly changing our charters to have some accommodation for the consolidations that we've already made. And so if all of you recall, we've kind of said, we've got a whole bunch of small charter changes that we want to talk about, but we're going to put all that on hold until we have the discussion about governance. So now that we're having a discussion about governance, do we see that eventually we're going to come back around and start talking about, eventually address those charter changes as well? And if we think we are, it doesn't have to say specifically what we're gonna do, but we may wanna mention that at the beginning. So after whatever amount of time is spent, we get to a certain point where we feel we've reached some agreement, we wanna put something in front of the voters, then we say, yeah, we understood from the beginning that we were kind of moving toward a charter change. It was just that kind of
It
acknowledgement.
might be very worthwhile to provide a little history, how we got to this conversation, what we've already done so far, what we may need to
Okay,
do,
that's a good idea.
and then
Some background.
some background.
Bring everybody up to where you are.
Great. But I'm hopeful that we'll have a decent turnout from the public, because this is an opportunity for them to talk about some continuing issues that they want to see us solve.
Okay.
Good food will do it.
What's that?
Good food will
Good
do.
food will do it, it's Saturday.
Yeah, oh yeah, free food, Saturday.
So what about facilitator attributes then?
Irene has it. Irene?
I'm just curious, we just got resumes from facilitators for a firearms discussion. Can any of those be
Yeah.
added to the mix? They're conflict resolution experts in some cases.
Yeah, actually, we talked to Greg about that. Yeah, that would
You
be,
did?
yeah, that would be a great tool to use with we have.
Absolutely.
And we're gonna be interviewing some of them, right?
We
Coming
are.
up soon.
Well, to go back to that though, we probably want to hire or line up a facilitator for the meeting. And we probably need to get some guidance from the 10 of us need to give guidance on how to proceed with that.
On how to choose a
On how to choose a facilitator. So maybe we should go back and talk about that, if that's okay. And what should we do? How do we do this? Would everyone be comfortable with Max and I working with Greg to get a generalist kind of facilitator?
For this
With-
one meeting.
Yeah, and we make it clear, this is just for one meeting. This is not, we're forming, this is not like TGIA or the recreation thing where we're seeing a series of meetings. We want a facilitator that's gonna be there we haven't decided, there's no schedule, there's no fix. We're just having a facilitator for this one event that's gonna come. Right?
I'm good with it.
I'm okay with that,
Okay.
especially since you already have a pool to start choosing from.
And I would say, I'll venture to say, if you've got recommendations, send them to Greg. Is that okay, Greg?
It is.
If anyone has recommendations for facilitators that we know and love, send them to Greg, and we'll proceed from there. Irene?
I would suggest somebody that we don't know and love. I think it's good to have a fresh voice and a fresh perspective and someone who doesn't already know the industry.
Yes,
So, that would just be my 2 cents.
Don't know, yes, but they love
but we want to get to know them. Okay, so let's try to think of a process though, so that we don't, when we arrive, if we announce some facilitator, people don't go, wait a second, not that person. How do we get around that? What's the process we can use?
Vermont's a small
We
state.
can't
I
have
mean,
online meetings.
you're trying to appease everyone, and I don't think you can. I think, go out and pick somebody who's qualified. I trust you, Max, and Greg to select somebody. As you said, this is just a first, form of this type, we're not, structuring the whole,
Yeah, okay.
consolidation process in this one meeting. It's not that big of a deal. I don't think we need to really get that overly worried. If one person's has a problem with it, well, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't think no one's gonna problem.
No, I'm just saying that just get the process moving, like Mike says, even though, it's not that big a deal, but just to keep the process moving. I mean, democracy moves when, you're looking for 100%, we're never gonna get
Okay.
this done.
Okay.
But we'll take all that input and
Yeah,
we'll see
yeah, it's
what
fine.
pools of candidates
Yeah.
we have, and from that pool, we'll see if we can sift out the right one for that one meeting. And if you like that person, maybe we can use them again, because there's not gonna be just a 1 or 2 time discussion.
Okay.
So,
I think there's pretty basic criteria, right? It's somebody that actually is an active, qualified
Yeah.
facilitator.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's willing to,
well, they do it, and it's
Facilitate a
available
meeting,
that day.
right.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
We may say this is the perfect person and they're not available, so
Right.
it is if for one shot, so.
yeah. So I think the only question would be if somebody that was selected had never been a facilitator and.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that.
I'd pick an A to B, call them both and see if they're available, and then share with us your choice.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
So we can get, I didn't mean to curtail the broader conversation. Does anyone have more to add, discuss, talk about?
Well, at one point when we first had this conversation, we talked about what were our individual questions. And we should be thinking about them and compiling them.
Right.
And information we want to have in hand before we get started. Now would be the time to start getting that information to you, so that you can say to facilitators, here's some of the questions that we're going to think about tackling.
That'd be good, yeah. Yeah,
So there are a couple of documents that have already been created that have that information. It'd be nice to, I guess, I could go find it again, but if somebody knows where it is, we could just share it around, or we could each individually look for it, but, I don't know, do we have those documents available easily?
The documents from the notes
There
from.
were minutes from specific meetings, and
Yeah. I don't have them on hand, but I'm sure.
Yeah, I know that, but I think it would be helpful for all of us to not get them that day. It would be good to have them ahead of time. And as I said, I've probably got them somewhere, but if,
Also,
Okay.
could someone send a link with
the
these are the?
report of the Essex Governance Group would be good for all of us to refresh our memories with.
okay.
Okay, I'll make a note of that, Andy. So what we would have is a very broad agenda for this meeting. Would be just a very brief, broad history of recent consolidation, what got us to this point, where are we? Something like that. What's been consolidated, where are we? Consolidated manager, consolidated finance. We're looking at consolidated public works, et cetera. And then part 2 is what are our priorities for continuing our discussion of governance? What do we hope to achieve? What are our concerns? That good?
You have to list the failures too.
That's a list, what,
You have to list the failures, not just the consolidations that happened, but
The-
the ones
the
that didn't
pa-
happen, that we
past
attempted and didn't work.
past failures?
That's failures.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause
Okay.
there's still a link on the town website, I think, that says merger information, right?
Yeah.
Does that go to the
Very out of date.
the old merger information? I think that's the part of the information you're talking about as well, right? It's not just recent efforts, it's also what's the history.
There's lots of live websites about failures that are still active.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sue?
that'd be part of the background, it's good.
Yeah.
I would just add yours, any gaps in knowledge.
Mhm. That's great.
Right, so we know what kind of education piece we need to bring in. Yeah.
Right.
I don't think when we talk about past merger efforts, we want to get into an analysis of why they failed, because then we're venturing into the political. We just want to mention these, right? We just want factual statements. We don't want to say, well, the reason this one failed, because I think that could lead us off into a very complicated direction.
If you don't revisit history, you repeat it, so, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it can't be a blame fest, and it can't be a we should have done it this way.
Yeah.
Well, I know,
We just need to
but-
be really
factual
That's why
and
there's a
brief.
facilitator.
Visit the history, remember it, and then move on.
Exactly.
That's where the trust comes in.
I was gonna say
It's
that
kind of
since
pretty
I've started,
difficult to build that.
since I started being the unified manager, one of the things I've mentioned was our past, and one of the great things that has always been a problem is the identity issue. And if you recall, I said that as we go forward with consolidating departments like the fire department or the highway department, we wouldn't even change the logos on the machine. On the machines, nothing, because identity has to be preserved, because that's the number one reason why things like this fail. So I think, I don't know if you were thinking about that, Irene, but that certainly is a lesson that if you did any kind of research outside of Essex Junction, that's pretty much one of the
Well, I
things.
would say, if we're going to say, what are our priorities, as an agenda item, what are our priorities for discussion of governance? What do we hope to achieve? What are our concerns? I think one of our concerns would be preserving our identity, or what's gonna happen to our identity. I think that would be contained in that piece.
Yes.
Just point of clarification, just.
Yep.
So in general, this is a meeting for the 10 of us
Yes,
and open to the public.
yes.
Now, when we're talking about what our questions, what our concerns, what worked, what didn't work, that conversation is for the 10 of us, for the audience to listen to, or for us to engage with the audience. I could see that lessons learned turning up to be quite a debate that might have an
Yeah, that's my
unintended
concern about
consequence.
going too far down that road, I think.
Right.
You know what, maybe what I could, because I think, maybe I get wrong, I don't want to assume anything here, but what I understand we would do is that the discussion is among the 10 of us. It's not gonna just be a big, open, rambling kind of a forum. I didn't think that's what we had in mind. I thought we had 10 of us is pretty rambling. to
But
be
I
honest.
think before we get started, if there are people there, it would be good to engage them at that point, have our discussion, you remembering what they added in the beginning, and then make sure that we leave enough time at the end to get additional feedback from whoever the public is there after they heard our discussion, so that we can then, at our next meeting, you know, when we talk about this, that can also get folded in there. And we're gonna need to find ways to bring in way more than just the people that come to see to
Mhm.
those meetings. And that'll have to be part of that discussion too.
Correct.
But I think it's really important that if people bother to come and take the effort to do that, that we ought to at least hear from them. But allow ourselves to do the discussion as we said, but then also hear from them after they heard our discussion, you know.
Dan.
Oh, all right, well, just to have that interaction with the public that it does attend, we've done it at the meetings, village meeting, town meeting, do questionnaires, have something, so they take something away, they can fill something out, submit it based on what they've heard, this is what I've heard, because there's no way everyone's gonna be able to make a comment at the meeting.
That's a good.
And that might be a good thing to do, develop
That'd be a
something.
good way to handle it.
Yeah.
Again, in trying to, that's a good idea, Dan. In trying to put this together, we just don't know how many people, if we scheduled a half an hour for public comment, what if there's 3 people?
Right, but that's why the idea
So
of
we don't really know,
papers,
right?
something that they can fill out.
Yeah, so we're starting to move forward, but I think you're right, I agree, we can do that.
Right.
We're gonna start at 10, the meeting we have the room from 10 till 2. Again, I was kind of just sketching out a possible actual schedule for the agenda. We are gonna have refreshments there in the morning, and then we're gonna break for lunch.
I think you can rely on your facilitator to help you do that. A
Right.
good facilitator would ask you both what your goal is, and then they would tell you how, a good way
How
to
to
achieve
structure
it.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't think we should do our schedule now? You don't wanna go over the schedule now?
I mean, aside from having lunch, I think we should. I think we should have the facilitator present, or at least that should be the conversation that you have with the facilitator.
Well, we had some discussion about about allowing time for public comment, and I would argue that that's something that I'm gonna guess the facilitator is gonna ask, say, well, how much time do you want to allow for public comment? And so how much time do we want to allow for public comment? Do we want to allow, and when do we want public comment?
Well, I think that depends on the order of the topics we discuss, and I really strongly
But
feel.
we don't know what we're gonna talk about.
That's why I'm saying you need your facilitator to have this conversation.
Okay,
That's what I'm trying to say.
all right, okay. Sue?
I would also suggest some flexibility with the public engagement based on how many people show up. If you have 5 people that are willing to commit 4 hours of their time to be a part of what's going on, I think you could probably work them, the facilitator could probably work them into maybe a little bit more than just at the start and the end. If you have 50 people, obviously that's gonna be more challenging, so
Yes,
I
right,
would
exactly.
suggest a little flexibility.
Okay, okay, so we'll just see what the facilitator said. Yes?
No, I'm willing to hear your proposal for a schedule.
Oh, it really was very, very loose. I was just gonna say, do we wanna start exactly at 10, or do we wanna have like a 15-minute mingle period? That was, we're gonna have coffee and bagels there, or donuts or something, and, you know, do we go, boom, 10 o'clock, okay, everyone sit down, or do we wanna have a 15-minute period? And then at the end, we have it until 2, do we wanna end promptly at 2, or do we wanna have like a 15, 20-minute break period before we actually have to leave the building? That was kind of what we were talking about. They're going to be serving lunch at noon. Again, how long do we want to take? Do we want to go a half an hour, an hour? I think we do. We want to probably do
15
15
minutes,
minutes. I mean, that was really kind of what we were different, very, very general. That's what I was trying to figure out. So we were trying to figure out. So I would say something like.
I think 4 hours is gonna feel very tight. I think we're gonna have way more conversation than 4 hours is
Okay.
gonna accommodate. And-
So start at 10.
And so I would be in favor of having the coffee and whatever available, 20 minutes beforehand, if we can do that,
Get
and
your
start
own
at 10 o'clock.
I was gonna say the same
And
thing.
then, so everybody go grab
Okay.
grab a sandwich and sit down, and let's continue our discussions.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna be packed.
So we want to start promptly at 10.
Yeah.
Promptly at 10?
Okay.
Okay.
Mingle ahead.
No mingle.
And then I think,
Mingle on your own time.
I think at the end, maybe just allow like 10 or 15 minutes to wrap up
Okay.
and talk about next actions, next steps, and have that be the closing versus having mingle time at the end too.
Okay. And 15-minute lunch. I mean, we can eat, but what we're talking about.
Working lunch.
Working
Working
lunch.
lunch.
Working
Yes,
lunch.
Sounds better if you say
Yeah,
working
it's
lunch.
gonna be a tight.
I'm not good at this stuff. One of the other things I thought we, just in talking, what we could do in terms of the history and where we are, we can kind of write it up, draft it up, send it to everybody. We can't have an online meeting, but if all of you could cogently, add your comments, your suggestions, and will try to maybe work with Patty and Greg and Travis and create a working document that everyone is more or less happy with, that we bring there for just a description of things that have happened in the past, where we are, consolidation efforts in the past, why they failed, not get into too much of an analysis, and everyone can make a comment about that. Good? And then if we've left something out, that would be the time to bring it up.
How much notice will we have? Because when I get something like this at a meeting, it's not real helpful for me to try to read it on the fly, so if you could give us
Well
adequate
ahead of
time to
time?
review it, that would be
Well
really
ahead of time?
helpful. Yeah.
Okay, okay. In advance, well in advance, okay.
It's gonna be here before you know it.
Yes.
Okay, good. You good?
Is that good, everybody? Everyone more or less happy? Or,
Equally
equally
dissatisfied.
confused? I'm not gonna ask you.
Thank you both.
Okay. No problem. No problem.
So I think that's it on the agenda.
I think
So,
that's it.
no executive session required. Any, entertain a motion to adjourn then?
So
Thank you, Irene.
Second.
Thank you, Sue. All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, trustees,
Move return.
Second?
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Wait, now, everybody, we've got some documents, I think, is it just you and I sign?
Yeah, the termination of the memorandum, the reconcile. The other one needs to be rewritten.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like my charter.
Well, I'm using it.
I know.
All right.
At the end.